Hello everyone, Cindy here with Monarch Mom DIY. Thank you so much for joining me today on my channel where I love to bring you the best tips and tools for creating beautiful home decor on a budget. Today I am back from a short break with my top 25 DIYs that I made last year in 2021 to give you an idea of what you might want to make in 2022. So without further ado, here we go. Today's first DIY is one that can be made very flexible for any season or holiday. We're going to be using 6 of the small pallets from Dollar Tree as well as 2 of the wood crates and some jars and other items. So I am going to use the white craft paint, chalk paint on my crates and my snowflakes. And with all 6 of my little palettes, I'm going to use my antique wax that I love so much. You brush it on and wipe it off and have a beautiful dark wood stain. I did go ahead and do the backs and all the sides. I really like for my projects to be completely finished. So take the extra time, make them look super nice, and then if you decide to sell them, they're all ready to go. Now moving to the wood crates, I'm just giving those a coat of the Waverly chalk paint in white. I did not do the insides completely. And then when my pellets were dry, I'm turning them over to the back. And I'm going to use some of these jumbo craft sticks. I'm going to cut a few pieces just to glue across the 2 seams on the back where 2 pallets are coming together. So you'll need 2 craft sticks for each one that we're making here for a total of 4 pieces. You can see where I'm gluing those across the back. I do eventually stain those, but just so you can see where they are, I left them plain for the video. Now I'm taking my white crate and just using some Titebond wood glue. I'm going to put a little bit across one of the long sides of the crate and glue that to the bottom of my set of 3 pallets. You can see we're making kind of like a flower box. And then I've got the 2 Dollar Tree snowflakes that I painted white. I'm giving this kind of a winter theme for right now. And you can glue those on, or if you want to make them more versatile, you can just tie it around that top piece of the pallet, and then you can change those out. Then I'm going to take my truffle chalk paint. It's essentially a paint that's about the same color as the antique wax. Dry brush that on my crates to give them a little bit more of a rustic look. Then taking some of my black and white gingham ribbon, I believe this is 3/8 inch from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to tie a small simple bow just to glue to each of those snowflakes and cover up that hole. Here I just have a couple glass bottles from Dollar Tree. I spray painted them black, but you could definitely do whatever color you'd like or leave them clear. And just to tie in the black and white gingham for the farmhouse look, I'm just gluing a piece of that around the opening of each bottle. Then it's completely up to you. You can add in greenery, flowers. I've got some red and white berries here. And then in the crates, I'm going to put in some pine cones. You can do whatever seasonal or holiday florals you would like. You could even leave the vases out completely and just make them like little candy boxes. I love this first project and how versatile it is depending on what season or holiday you're decorating for or just non-seasonal. Our second project is a Snowman Hat treat box. I made this not too long ago, but going along with winter, you can take a charger plate, a cookie container, and then a few florals and ribbon. I spray painted the outside of the container only with a satin or matte finish black spray paint, and then do the same to the charger plate. These 2 pieces will make the Snowman Hat. Then I'm going to use a combination of E6000 and hot glue to attach the bottom of the treat container to the inside of the charger plate. That way the lid is still removable on the top of the treat box, and you can use this as just decor, or you can actually use it to give treats to someone. If you don't have a cookie container, you could always use a metal coffee can like I showed there. Then to decorate our hat and also cover up where the glue is connecting our two pieces, I'm using some of the wide black and white gingham ribbon from Dollar Tree. This is a nice big size. It is a little thinner than what you might find at Hobby Lobby or Michael's or another craft store. Just wrap that around, glue both ends, and you've got a nice little decoration on the rim of your hat there. And then I'm just going to take some winter or Christmas florals and arrange those and glue those down as well to our hat. Then as a finishing touch and to cover up the stems of our florals, I'm using one of these red poinsettias and just gluing that on to complete our little snowman hat treat box. I love this. They would be great as centerpieces. You could leave off the red if you wanted it just to be more of a winter decor or add in a color like dark blue. For DIY number 3, this was a really fun non-seasonal farmhouse welcome home sign using 2 of the long signs from Dollar Tree, some tumbling tower blocks, 4 of the small wood arrows, and a couple other items. So you can do this project with any of these tall signs from Dollar Tree or even 2 of the big square ones, just attaching them together by removing any decorations from one of the sides. I wanted to use this front side because it has the shiplap little indentations, so I am going to try and smooth out where it ripped up when I took up the hearts. I think I did a pretty good job. So I'm going to keep the backs as the backs, and I'm just going to glue across the seam here a couple pieces of 5-gallon paint stir sticks that I had left over from a previous project, and just glue those, make that look nice and seamless. Now with the front of our project, like I said, there's this nice shiplap indentations going horizontally. So when I paint this with my plaster chalk paint, I'm going to try to not get it in the cracks, but if I do, I can just take this little corner of this paint scraper and scratch those out to have my shiplap look. This is one of my favorite ways to put words on a sign. If I need a word I don't have a stencil of, or if I don't have a Cricut, I print out the word from a Google image search and then use the carbon tracing paper. Or you could use some metal words or wood MDF words from Dollar Tree. But I just wanted this nice fun script for welcome. So I traced it on, and then I'm just going to fill it in with a black marker. Now with my 4 small arrows here, I want to turn these into houses, so I filled in the little hanging holes. And my first idea was to use tumbling tower blocks to kind of trace out the edges of the arrow to look like a house, but I wasn't really liking how it was turning out. It just looked, I don't know, kind of janky, so I went with a different idea. But first I'm going to paint all 4 of my houses with my ink Waverly chalk paint. Just give them one good coat with that black color. And then I did go over them with Mod Podge. I wasn't sure if this sign would end up inside or outside. So instead of using the tumbling tower blocks, I decided to add texture and a roof to my houses by just cutting a couple pieces of the nautical rope from Dollar Tree. And I'm going to glue those on either side of the point just to give the illusion of a house. On 3 of my houses, I'm going to put the letters H, M, and E. And you can see here I'm just kind of free drawing a really wide, kind of thin typewriter type of letter. You could use stencils, you could use sticker letters. I just went for, like I said, this thin font that I drew on with a pencil, and then I'm going over it with a white paint marker. These I buy at Walmart in the craft section. So H, M, and E. And then for my O, I took some of this kind of papery greenery. I think I got this at Hobby Lobby in the wedding aisle, and I just wrapped it a few times and glued it down to be my O. Then I'm just going to glue my 4 houses onto my sign, spacing them out evenly. And I love how this turned out, the welcome home with the 4 little houses. You could add a hanger to this if you like. You could add other decoration to the left and right of the word welcome, but I just love the simplicity of this sign. DIY number 4, we're going to make a wood box stacked shelf using 3 of these die cut boxes from Dollar Tree, some giant craft sticks from Walmart, a couple paint sticks, some wood glue, and antique wax. So I love using the wood items from Dollar Tree. You guys know if you've seen my channel for any time at all. But I wanted to cover up these die cut shapes. So here I'm taking the giant craft stick, and I'm going to trim it down so that it fits inside this lid. And funny enough, 3 of these next to each other is exactly going to fill in the space. So once I have those 3 cut, I'm putting some wood glue there, and then we're going to lay those down. You can see I already did the other 2 lids and let those dry completely. And now we have kind of a neutral palette, an empty palette that we can make into whatever we want. I am then going to take the box and the lids once everything's dry, and I'm using the antique wax on everything. So inside, outside of the boxes. The only thing I'm not doing is where I'm going to glue the boxes together. So you can see there's one side there that is not painted. And then I'm also going to use the antique wax inside my lids as well, so that everything has that beautiful dark stained color. So you can still see that die cut on the back, but that's going to be on the back, so we're not going to worry about it. I'm putting a little bit of wood glue there and then some on the back side of the box, and you can see I'm going to glue the box into the lid like this, kind of like a little chair, and we're going to do that to all 3 of our boxes. And then we'll put wood glue here on the top of the lid and glue them together like this. So it's kind of like a stacked little shelf here. You could make this as mini tall as you want. You could do 2 rows of 3 and make it have even more compartments. But I just thought this was so cute. You could have it on a shelf or hang it, put whatever you'd like inside. I just took 3 of these small greenery plants from Dollar Tree and put those in. And how cute is this little decoration? Now, I wasn't too pleased with this top one, so I had to put it in a little pot because you could see the foam through that burlap. So I'm just going to fancy this top one up just because it's a little more visible. Stick some moss in there and then put our little fake plant in. And then this little non-seasonal farmhouse decor is all finished. DIY number 5 was probably one of my most fun projects to complete last year, making one of these racetrack lanterns using the Hot Wheels tracks and a sign. I took the back out of the sign because it was that cardboard, and I decided to replace the bottom with some paint sticks. So here you can see, like I've done before, I'm measuring where I need to cut, and then I'm going to, with my saw and miter box, cut those down so that I can then glue them across the bottom of our box here, just using a little bit of hot glue, and then gluing those across. We'll get a nice little shiplap looking tray for the bottom of our lantern. Once we had those glued, we'll set those aside. Now for $1, you get 2 of these tracks. They're 24 inches long. So what I'm doing here is I'm using my ruler and I'm just measuring where the center spot is, because that's where they're going to crisscross each other. This is an optional step. I decided to glue some of these clear plastic gems to my tracks just to give a little more dimension to my lantern. And then I also took some and glued 3 on each of the sides of my box or the base of my lantern. So just going around and gluing first my center one, and then I'll glue the other 2 on each side. You may want to use E6000 on the track, but I found that my hot glue kept those on just fine. You can see there then that I spray painted both of my track pieces and my base with white spray paint. I did end up going back over them though with the white chalk paint, just because sometimes to get in the little crevices of the track is a little difficult. I also painted a wood ball for the top and this jar lid that I'm going to use to finish off my lantern at the top. So you can see there the little bristles of my brush are getting in all the little spaces, and just making sure this has a nice base coat of the white. I do find though that you do need to spray paint the track pieces, and you want to make sure you use a spray paint that is good for plastic. Otherwise it will just crack. Here I'm using some E6000 there at the base, and I'm gluing it. You can see it's kind of going across the corner of the box, and I'm just trying to get that as centered as I can, applying a little bit more glue on the inside there. So once that first piece is in place and is pretty much stuck down, then you'll take your second piece and go right over the top, and then we're going to glue also where those 2 pieces overlap each other so that the top piece doesn't slide around. And again, gluing on the ends and getting that to attach to the inside of the box. And here's where your color choice comes in. I am loving this teal color called Lagoon. It's an old Martha Stewart craft paint, and I wanted to give this kind of a turquoise and patina type of look. Again, you could have just left it white or make this racetrack lantern whatever color you want. But you can see I just did the outside of the racetrack pieces and also of my box. I'm going to dry brush that color on my top of my lantern. And then taking some of my antique wax, I'm going to just go over it again, like I said, just to give this kind of an older, rusty kind of patina type look just to the outside. I'm going to go ahead and leave the inside of my lantern completely white. Once everything was dry then, I'm using more E6000, and I'm going to attach my jar lid to make my little topper for my lantern. We'll use a little bit of hot glue as well to set that on there right away while the E6000 dries. This is a really fun project. Depending on what size box you use and what decorations you put inside, you can really make this versatile for any decor, any season or holiday, and it really was fun. I can't wait to put some more of these together this year. If you are stopping by my channel for the first time today, let me say a big warm-hearted welcome. I really hope you'll consider sticking around by hitting that subscribe button. And I've been getting questions about notifications, so please click on the bell and then choose which level of notifications you would like so that YouTube will let you know each time I upload a new video. For DIY number 6, we're going to make a pretty large wood and metal slatted box. I have metal in quotes because we're just going to make it look like metal. We're going to use some 5-gallon paint sticks, 2 of these. I believe these are 8-inch square canvas boards. I'm going to glue 2 of those together to make the base for our box. We're also going to use tumbling tower blocks, and I'm taking these pieces here of sticks. I believe I ended up using 24 pieces because I needed 6 for each side of my box, and they are about 8 inches in length. So we're brushing on the antique wax, wiping off the excess because you guys know I love that dark stain wood look. Here I am making 4 pieces of tumbling tower blocks. Now you can see for each piece, I'm using 8 blocks. I'm gluing 2 together like a sandwich cookie to make them basically square. And then we're going to glue those 4 pairs together. These are going to be the 4 corners of our box, like the frame of our box. So here is one corner, and then we've got them all dry, and I did go ahead and use the antique wax on them. They're going to be on the inside of the box, but I still wanted it to look all finished and blend in with the wood slats on the side. So once we have those dry, now we're going to use some hot glue and glue those down into the 4 corners of our base. So you can see we're kind of going to build the frame of the box, and then we're going to put the sides of the box on. Next, using a combination of wood glue and hot glue, we're going to start on one side and we're going to glue these slats to the side of our box, starting on the bottom and then working our way up. You can see I put a little too much wood glue, put some hot glue with it, and we're gluing that. It's flush against the bottom, and we're gluing it to the 2 corner pieces there, the tumbling tower blocks that we made. So now we're going to come to the next side and we're going to do the bottom all the way around, and then we'll go up the second layer until we get all the way up to the top. So here you can see how some of the corners overlapped a little, so I needed to cut those down and sand them so that my corners were as smooth as possible. But now for the metal part of the box, we're taking these giant craft sticks and I'm going to cut 8 of them down so that they fit like you saw that one right on the corner of the box. So 2 for each corner would be a total of 8. So go ahead and cut those. And then to give them kind of a metal rivet type of look, I'm using these big, I don't even know what they're called, these stickers from Dollar Tree. They just look like dots. And these are not the tiny ones, but you could use whichever ones you want. And I'm just spacing those out evenly, so I have 4 of them on each of my pieces there. So once you have all those on, make sure they're pressed down really well. I'm going to use the little foam dome brush here to get some elephant chalk paint on there. And then once that's almost dry, I'm going to go over it again with silver lining, or you could use mineral to give this a galvanized metal type of look. I've used this technique on a few projects and I really love how it turned out. Now when they're dry completely, you can see I'm going to be able to glue those on the corner. It covers up my rough edges from my paint sticks, and it's really going to give this a really awesome metal looking accent to our box or our planter. Isn't that awesome? I just love this so much, how that really looks like a wood and metal planter box. It is fairly large. It's about 8 inches square and almost 10 inches tall. And then you can put whatever you want in there. You can change this out seasonally. You can hang a tag on the front that says something. I just like to leave it neutral so that I can change it out whenever I want. DIY number 7, we're going to move into some spring and we're going to make a birdhouse out of 2 of these pallets and 1 of these trays from Dollar Tree, some dowels and some paint, and then some raffia hay and some little birds and eggs. So these are 4x6, and I'm going to go ahead and paint these with pool blue all on all the edges, all the sides. Then I'm going to use ocean for the base of our little birdhouse here, just getting all our pieces painted. I was kind of going with a different shades of blue kind of theme for this project. These are some 6-inch dowels. They are just left over in my craft stash, but I know that Dollar Tree has some thinner ones. And once I did paint those white, and then I also came back to my tray, and I'm just gonna dry brush some white on there just to soften up that darker blue. Again, that's the color called Ocean. Go around the edges a little bit as well. And then once our pieces are all dry, we'll be able to start putting our little birdhouse together. Taking just some hot glue on the ends, I'm going to put one of these dowels on the inside corner of each of our trays. Also put a little bit down there in the corner just to make sure that our little dowels, our pillars of our house, will stand up. Then gluing our two pallets together, they'll lean together to make the roof of our birdhouse, and get those secured, and then we'll glue the roof onto the top of each of our dowels, and that will be basic construction for our little birdhouse. I think this idea could also be made into a really cool stable for a nativity set at Christmas time. You could use this as a lantern, maybe just do the one pallet across the top. So many different ways you can use these pieces and this idea. Again, that paper leaf garland from Hobby Lobby's wedding aisle, and then a black and white gingham bow to finish decorating the top part of our little birdhouse here. Just glue that bow to the top of the wreath where the two pallets are kind of coming together there at the top. I also wanted to try to cover up that star cutout, so I'm going to take that same ribbon and I'm going to go around the outside of our tray with just one line of the black and white ribbon to tie it in for that farmhouse look. Then from here, you can just add whatever you'd like. You could do this hay. You can do a nest if you have any nests. I have these birds, I believe are from Michael's, and then the eggs are from Dollar Tree. These were on little clips. Just take those off, set them inside. I did need to glue 3 of these eggs together, otherwise they were just rolling all over the place. So set them in there, and then I did take one more bird and glue it to the top of our birdhouse. DIY number 8 is another favorite non-seasonal. I made a 2-tiered tray. I'm going to make 2 of these so I can show you some different ways, but for each tray I need 2 of these signs, and one of them I'm going to completely take the back of the sign away and just keep the frame, and we'll go ahead and remove any of the little nails, and then paint all 4 of these with kind of a dry brushing effect with our white chalk paint, and we'll sand it a little bit to make it look a little worn. Here you go, just sanding a little bit of the edges, get any extra little drips of paint off. And then we will put our little trays together once we get all of those sanded. So like I said, of the 4 signs, we only kept 2 of the backs, and I'm taking some of this really pretty white with black floral contact paper from Dollar Tree, and we're just going to put this on the back. What was the back of the sign, now it will be the bottom of our tray. So lay that down, make sure you get out any bubbles, and then take your Fiskars fingertip knife and cut around the sign there, and you get a nice clean cut. So these will be the bottoms of our trays. So just taking some hot glue, put glue around the back of the frame there, and then we'll pop that back inside for the bottom of our tray. So we'll do this to both of our trays, add any extra hot glue in there as needed, just to make sure it's in there nice and secure. Here you can see I'm also running a bead of hot glue around the back, just where the frame and the backing meet each other to make it extra secure. We'll do that to both pieces. Then we're going to take 8 tumbling tower blocks, 4 for each tray. We're going to paint those black just to go with the color scheme, and we're going to use these as spacers between the 2 frames. This is going to give us our 2-tiered or 2-layered effect on our little tray here. So I'm using wood glue to glue a tumbling tower block into the corner. For the feet of my trays, I decided to use these lids for salt shakers. In a future DIY in this video, you'll see some little vases made out of salt shakers, and I didn't use the lids. So this is what I used the lids for after I spray painted them black. Now they're little feet for our tray. Once these tumbling tower blocks are dry on the one side, we'll put glue on them again, and here you can see now our little crate. It's basically a crate without the middle slat. And this is just a fun thing you can do to take a couple of those Dollar Tree signs and really elevate it. Here are just 2 leftover soup cans that I spray painted black to go along with the color scheme. Add in some rocks, some jewels, whatever you want to weigh down your florals, and we'll just trim these floral stems so that they fit in the cans, and you can arrange any type of floral arrangement in there, seasonal, holiday, spring, fall, winter, summer, whatever you want. And so that is one way I used this 2-tiered little tray. Another way is you could style it just with a little candle and some greenery. So very flexible. I love this project, and I hope you guys do too. DIY 9 of my top 25 are these hanging paint stick flower boxes. We're going to use a pack of the 1-gallon paint stir sticks, the inside drawer of these wood box drawers from Dollar Tree, a couple brackets, and some florals. So these are, like I said, the smaller box that has the die cut hole, the inside of these drawers, and I'm also going to use 8 of these paint sticks, paint those with our antique wax, and then do the same for our little wood boxes. So we're making a pair of these hanging flower boxes. So we've got 4 paint sticks for each. We're going to cut some pieces of the giant craft sticks to glue across the back to secure our paint sticks together. And those, like I said, will be on the back. Now, taking some wood glue, we're going to center our little box to the bottom of our paint sticks. And this is where you can put in flowers or candles or whatever else you'd like. But I just love the look of this, and use your little square ruler there to get that centered and up a little bit. Once those are both on, I'm using some E6000 to glue on these little brackets that I got on Amazon. They are in my Amazon storefront, which is linked in the description box below. And I just thought these were a fun little effect on these wood boxes. Then taking some hot glue and a little piece of floral foam, hot glue that down into the box, and then glue some moss. You can use the reindeer moss, Spanish moss. If you prefer the lighter colored raffia hay, do that as well. I just used what I had on hand. Cover up that floral foam, and then use your creativity and whatever florals you have to decorate your boxes. I love that these are so tall because it lets you use some taller florals. I love these blue wildflowers they had last spring. So, so pretty. Now the little holes between the paint sticks are really great because it lets you thread some jute twine through there to be able to then tie a knot and create a hanger for each of these hanging flower boxes. If you love budget home decor DIY videos, please give this video a thumbs up to let YouTube know this is content that you want to keep seeing. DIY number 10 was a farmhouse wood shelf that was super fun to put together using paint sticks, giant craft sticks, 2 of these canvases from Dollar Tree, and some of these wood planks. Now this is an entire pack of 10 1-gallon paint sticks that I am cutting right before the little indent where the handle is. So we'll trim those down, and then I'm going to take 4 of these squares, the flattest ones. You could see I was looking, and I'm going to glue them together in sets of 2 like a sandwich. I'm going to use these little clips to make sure they stay nice and tight until that wood glue dries, and I'll show you what we're going to do with these next to build our shelf. Now these are 6x8 canvases from Dollar Tree. I am going to remove the canvas and just use the frames on this project. Just take your knife and go around. It does take a little bit of time to remove the staples. Now if I use jumbo craft sticks, I could go across horizontally. Here I'm going to use the giant ones, and 5 of them fits across. I should have trimmed these before I glued them to the frame. So learn from my mistake. Cut your craft sticks before you glue them onto the frame here, because it did take a lot more work trying to get them trimmed once they were attached to the frame. Here you can see I'm just putting those across one side of our frame. Do that to both using the giant craft sticks and set those aside. Now these are 8 pieces, 8 of the 10 craft sticks, paint sticks, and we're going to, actually no, we're going to use all 10, sorry. We're going to put antique wax on these and then brush off or wipe off the excess. Now here you're going to see what I was talking about, trying to cut these ends off using a box cutter, and then I think I ended up just using scissors to trim those off, but like I said, do it before you glue them on and you will be much happier in life. But here's what they look like. Okay, and then we're going to use antique wax on those as well. These are going to be the 2 shelves for our little unit that we are putting together. Wipe off that excess, and you know I just love it. Love, love, love. I almost hope that Waverly comes out with a different color of wax. I think that would be fun to have maybe a lighter brown color. Once we get all of that done, we'll be ready to start building the frame of our shelf. I did decide that I needed some tumbling tower blocks. These are going to be used on the back as we put our shelf together, just to make sure everything holds. Okay, so here you can see all 10 of my paint sticks. I've got 2 on each of the long sides, and then we've got 6 that are going across. I have those spaced out, and here you can see I'm putting these 6 pieces, gluing them spaced out on those 2 long ones. Now, my shelf is turned sideways so that it would fit in the camera frame. These shelves that I'm gluing right now are actually going to turn and be horizontal. Then I'm going to put my other long side underneath all of those 6 pieces once that's a little bit drier. So it looks kind of like a ladder, and then this is the back. I'm using the tumbling tower blocks to glue across the seams where paint stick pieces are being attached to each other, and then also each of the 4 corners. I hope that makes sense. I think you can see what I'm doing here. So this is like the back now of the shelf. All right, remember those squares that we glued together? Then I took my saw and I cut each of my squares into 2 triangles going corner to corner diagonally. We're going to give those a coat of the antique wax and then start building our shelf. Now, I'm going to put in the description box below the longer versions of these projects. So if I'm going too fast because I'm doing 25 projects in this video, please go locate the original. It'll go a little slower and give you in more detail the steps, but you can see what I'm doing here. And once I had the canvas frame with the craft sticks glued down, Now I'm supporting it with 2 triangular halves of my square wood planks. You could hang it this way, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to hang it where the triangles are underneath the shelf. So we're going to do that twice, and then you can see here, you can hang this on your wall, you can style it however you'd like. Again, if you want the longer version of how to make this going a little slower, please check the description box for the link to the original project video. DIY 11 is another fun one to make for spring and summer, this picket fence windmill sign using this 3-arrow sign from Dollar Tree, 2 of the wood crates, either from Dollar Tree or Michael's, and the metal windmill. So I'm going to take my elephant gray Waverly chalk paint and give the front side of these, actually front and back of the arrows, a couple coats to cover over the design. And then I'm also going to paint both of my wood crates with this dark gray elephant color. Then using the lighter gray called Mineral, I'm going to dry brush over the elephant just to give that rustic farmhouse look to all 3 of these arrows that we're going to turn into a picket fence and our 2 wood crates. Probably the most difficult part of this project is using these heavy-duty wire snips to get this little stand off of the windmill, because I just want to use the windmill, but after a little bit of work I was able to get it. Then I decided to paint my windmill the lighter gray Mineral so that it would pop off the background a little bit more. So go ahead and paint that all with your Mineral chalk paint. And I went ahead and left that center part the color that it was. Now that my pieces are dry, I'm taking some wood glue and I'm going to glue my 2 crates together next to each other like this to make a wider crate, and go ahead and use the clamps until that's completely dry. And then we're going to glue this to our 3 fence pieces, and I'm basically going to use the crates to hold the 3 fence pieces together. So once I center that on the front of the fence pieces, we'll let that also dry completely. I did take some white chalk paint and dry brush that on our windmill, again for that rustic, more textured look on the windmill. Now you could totally leave the fronts of your crates blank. I'm just showing you some different examples of things from Dollar Tree that you could use. Maybe paint that welcome or the thankful white so it pops off. Some other metal words off some other Dollar Tree signs. I found this at a local store that says Home Sweet Home, and I cut it apart. I decided to do home and then use the 2 stars on either side of the word. I am going to paint it white so that it stands out a little bit lighter off of the dark gray background. Then taking some jute twine, I'm going to wrap it around the top a few times to add another texture and a little more interest here at the top of our sign. You can see I got some paint spots on the back, so I did sand those a little bit to get those out. Just wrap that jute twine around a few times after you've glued the end, glue the other end and snip it, and you've got a nice added interest to the top of this piece. Now I'm going to use this Fix-All adhesive from Dollar Tree, first of all, to glue that circle to the middle of our windmill, and then also to glue the windmill on. I'm going to use hot glue and a combination of the Fix-All to glue any of this metal to our project. Now in order to add some florals into our crates, I'm taking a pool noodle. I'm out of floral foam, so I'm going to just take a piece of this, cut it wide enough, and then I'm going to cut it in half long ways so that I can just put a rounded half into each of my crates, and that will serve as my floral foam. I will take some hot glue on top of that and then also put in some of my reindeer moss to cover up that pool noodle so that it's all ready to add some florals. And here's how it turned out. I love this with the variety of heights of the flowers, and definitely a project you could make with any sort of theme, just using one of these arrow signs from Dollar Tree and 2 wooden crates. DIY number 12 is another one that you can make any time of year, and I really enjoyed making this using 6 of these trays with the rounded handles and 3 of the really tall hanging arrows from Dollar Tree. So first, with your arrows, remove the jute string, remove the staples, and then instead of using my antique wax like I normally do, I was just going to show you how you can just take a brown acrylic paint, add some water to it, and use that as a stain. I'm going to do this on all 6 of my trays, inside and outside, and also on all 3 of my arrows, on both front and back, and all the edges. Once that has dried, I'm going to take a light gray, and I'm going to dry brush this just on the outside and bottoms of my trays. I just left the inside the dark brown, and then I'm also going to dry brush it on both sides of all 3 of my arrows. So my idea here is I'm going to make a tiered shelf unit. It will be 2 trays wide and 3 trays tall. So once all our pieces were ready, I got my wood glue and some clamps, and we're ready to start putting this together. So we're going to do one side of the shelf unit first, and you can see I'm centering the arrow on the outside of the tray there. I did put some pencil marks just so I knew where to put my wood glue, and just putting a little bit of glue there, lining the arrow back up, centering it on the side there. And then once I have it in place, I'm going to go ahead and use some of these clamps from Dollar Tree to hold it until it is completely dry. So my bottom shelf is all the way down on the surface of the table. Then we'll glue the second arrow on the other side, and this is what it looks like while it is drying. Now about halfway up, I'm going to attach the next little tray to be my next shelf. So putting some glue on both sides. Again, we're going to get that in there between those 2 arrows, line it up so it's nice and even, and put some more clamps so that it can stay in place until it is dry. And we'll glue that on both sides of this little unit here. Both sides of the tray will be glued and clamped. Then the top tray, we're going to put some more wood glue, and I believe I lined this one up so the bottom of the tray was right in line with the bottom of the triangle there. So you can see that's what I kind of used to get everything straight and even. Now once those 3 were in place and glued to the arrows, I'm going to add another column of trays on the other side of that center arrow. So here I'm just gluing and clamping again, and then we're going to glue the 3rd arrow on the other side, just like this, and then add the middle and top trays, just like we did with the first set of 3. And here's the entire thing all put together with 6 trays and 3 arrows, now with the clamps off. And here I'm just going to show you a couple different ways you can use these. You can use them to hold paint markers. You can use it at your coffee station to hold K-cups. But I decided to style it like this, just with some different farmhouse decor. And the cool thing about this is you could make this as wide as you want. Just keep adding 3 more trays and another arrow on the end. DIY 13 is a really cute little salt shaker vase with box, and I'm going to use tumbling tower blocks, 2 pieces of 5-gallon paint sticks, and some florals, and 3 salt shakers. So the number of tumbling tower blocks you're going to use for the bottom of your box will just depend on the length of your sides or your paint stick pieces. But for this one, it looks like I'm going to do, I think, 14 tumbling tower blocks for the bottom, and we got all of those glued together. Now, anytime I try to paint glass, I do a layer of matte finish Mod Podge first. I feel like this helps the paint stick a little bit better. Even when I'm using chalk paint, I'm still going to do Mod Podge, just so that it has a better surface to stick to. I'm going to make a really light yellow, mixing my maize and my white Waverly chalk paints, and then I'm going to paint all 3 of my little salt shakers. So I had put these tumbling tower blocks together in sets of 3, and now I'm going to go ahead and glue all 14 of them in a row. You can see here I'm doing this for the bottom, and then I have a set of 2 that will be on each end of my box. So there's my 14, and then here I'm putting these 2 on top at the very end, lining it up, and then these 2 on the other end, lining up. I love crafting with tumbling tower blocks. You can make so many cool things, and this ended up being actually a pretty good seller at one of my spring craft shows. Then just taking the paint stick piece, we're gonna wood glue that to the side. It's okay if it doesn't line up perfectly. I think it's kind of cute that it hangs over just a little bit on either end there. And then now you have your entire box put together. So let that dry really well. I weighted it down a little bit to make sure it was nice and held together. Now I'm going to paint my little tray or my little box that I made here with some white Waverly chalk paint on the inside and the outside and all the edges. Then taking one of my stencils from a maker's studio, I just really loved this one for the side, just the word simplicity. And this is just like my Magnolia design stencils as well, just using some chalk paste and a little squeegee, pushing it in through the mesh stencil, and then when we lift it, we'll have the word really nicely imprinted on the side of our project, just like that. I did decide to add these couple little flourishes as well. Now that my paint is dry in my salt shakers, I am going to do another layer of Mod Podge to keep that paint from chipping off and then letting that dry. Then taking some jute twine, I'm going to wrap that around the screw top part of each of my salt shakers to finish off the top to make each of my little vases for this box. Then all you have to do is just set your little vases inside your tray and then add whatever floral. I loved these little lavender that came in the pot for $1 at Dollar Tree, and so I just put those inside my little salt shaker vases. Super cute. It looks like this box is big enough you could add a 4th vase if you wanted, but I love the look of the 3. DIY 14 is a really fun watermelon wall pocket. I did a whole watermelon themed video last summer. You can find that in the description box below. But I thought these metal wall pockets just looked like a watermelon slice to me there at the bottom. So I did spray paint the entire thing white, and then tracing just that top half on this black and white checked paper. I cut that out and just applying some Mod Podge there. In the inside, I'm going to spritz some water on this paper and attach that to the inside there on the back so that you see that it'll be behind whatever flowers we put in there. Then taking a pencil, I went really carefully and tried my best to freehand two lines. One will be where the green rind will be of the watermelon, and then the next one up to it will be remaining white after I color in with my Sharpie paint marker. And then taking my crimson Waverly chalk paint, I'm going to paint with a very small brush the inside of the watermelon, going all over that and really close up to that white edge with my small paintbrush. Once all that paint was dry, I did put a layer of Mod Podge over just because it is metal and I didn't want it to scrape off. Then putting some pieces of floral foam down inside with some hot glue. I did have to cut them a little small so that they would fit in there. Just put some all the way across, put some more hot glue, and then a layer of the reindeer moss. I had shown at the beginning some flowers, but I decided instead to use the artificial succulents. Some are from Amazon, some are from Dollar Tree, and I just thought this was super cute for summer. It did need the final touch though, taking my black paint marker and drawing on some big fat watermelon seeds to finish this off. If you are wanting more detailed explanation on any of these projects, please look in the description box below the video title where I have linked all of the original videos that these projects were in last year on my channel. DIY 15 is a wood crate curio shelf that I've been wanting to make for a while. I'm going to use 13 of these wood crates and some 5-gallon paint stir sticks. So this is another one of those projects that you can make whatever color you want that you can then style for whatever season or holiday. So I have 5 of the crates here at the bottom. I'm going to wood glue them together and use my clamps always to make sure that things get glued all the way together as firmly and as straight as possible. So we're going to do this bottom row of 5. And then these 3 in the middle are glued together on the short sides, and then another row of 5 at the top. Then once those 3 individual sections are dry, we're going to glue them together. Now the middle section that has the 3 going horizontally is just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit wider than the 5 that are standing vertically. It wasn't enough to bother me, and I actually was pretty amazed that it all fit pretty squarely. So now all 3 of those pieces have been glued together and have been clamped and dried. I painted the inside of all my crates white, and then using some of these giant craft sticks, I cut pieces that would fit perfectly in the bottom so that the inside of my shelves would be flat and you wouldn't have things falling into the little hole there on the side of the crate. So I did, I think, 2 pieces inside each of the vertical crates, and then, yep, they fit right on in there. And then I don't think I did anything on the inside of that middle row. Then taking 3 of my 5-gallon paint sticks, I'm going to make a little bit of an edge on the front of each section. So here I'm just marking where I need to cut each of my 3 paint sticks, and then we'll get those painted and glued onto the front of our little curio shelf. Once I had all 3 of my paint sticks glued down and in place, I decided to use some of these brackets I used in a previous DIY to the front of each little section to make it kind of look like a little library shelf. And here you can see I just put some different fall items. This would be super cute for your essential oils, anything else like that that you want. Maybe your spices, you could do a version of this for your spices in your kitchen. But I just love how this turned out and how large it ended up being. DIY 16, we're going to make a wood tray with some tumbling tower blocks with some handles on it and another trio of vases. This time I'm using a glass jar that came in some canned pears. Yes, not peaches. So here I'm just taking my tumbling tower blocks, trying to figure out how many I need to go under each of the vases. So I'm using, I think it's 10 under each vase. So I'm going to use 30 tumbling tower blocks. I'm going to make 5 rows of 6 just like this. So I'm gluing 6 tumbling tower blocks end to end against my straight edge there and letting those dry. So I'm going to do this 5 times, and then once all those are dry, we will glue those 5 rows all together to make one of the layers of our tray. Now, yes, I did say one of the layers. I'm going to make this a little, I want it to be thicker, the tray. So once those 5 are put together, those 5 rows, now I'm taking, I forgot how many it was. I think it's 54 more. I have 9 tumbling tower blocks here that I'm going to glue together on the, what would you call that? The wide side, one of the tops, okay? So this is 54 all together in a grid, and then the 30 that we started with. So I have 2 layers here that I'm going to paint with the antique wax, wipe off the excess, and then glue these 2 sections together to make a nice thick tray. Now, if that's going too fast, remember you can always go down to the description box, find the original video of when I made this project, and it'll go just a little bit slower so that if you're having a hard time following this, you can follow that along. But there you see, I'm gluing those 2 sections together and then clamping them, so it's going to be a nice thick tray. Now, just like I did with the salt shakers, I'm going to put a layer of Mod Podge on each of these jars first. Then I'm going to paint them with my chalk paint. This time I'm using the color Plaster, and then I will go over them with Mod Podge again. Using this adhesive cork sheet from Dollar Tree, I'm going to cut 2 strips on the shorter edge that are 1 inch wide. And my trimmer doesn't want to go through all of that cork, so it scores it, and then I cut it with scissors. I'm actually going to cut 4 of these. So 2 of them are going to be attached to each other, sticky sides together, to make one of our cork handles for our trays. And I did get that lined up wrong, and then it ripped, but it was okay because I could get it to put back together and then just put that on the inside of the handle. But this is what I want to do. I want to make the handle attached to the side of the tray. First, I'm going to attach it with hot glue, and then we're going to put one of these little furniture tacks in just for a little metal accent. And I was actually surprised at how easily these went into the wood of the tumbling tower blocks. But I just thought that was really fun, kind of industrial addition to the side of the tray. Now, instead of using jute twine like I did on the salt shakers, I'm using some of this special, I guess it's like burlap kind of, or jute ribbon. It had some different designs, and I'm just hot gluing 1 piece of that around the mouth of each of my 3 jars. Then you can style these with whatever you want. I had just 3 fall floral picks that I trimmed the stems on, and you can, again, change those out for whatever season or holiday you'd like. I love this tray. It did use quite a few tumbling tower blocks, a little bit more than 1 box, but I think it's adorable. For DIY 17, we're going to use some easy to find wood pieces and other items to make this hexagon shaped lantern. These hexagons are from Michael's, they're 99 cents, and then I'm using a chunky wood circle from Dollar Tree, as well as it looks like I have 6 of the tumbling tower blocks I'm gluing together on the wider side there to make a square. This is going to be part of the top of our lantern, as well as this chunky circle will be part of the top of the lantern as well. Just fill in that hole with some spackle and let that dry, and then we'll get everything all painted. Now these dowels you can get in different lengths. I'm going to cut mine in just a minute, but with these hexagons, they come with a jute string. They also come with a sawtooth hanger on the back. So I needed to remove all of that stuff because this is going to be instead the top and the bottom of our lantern. So fill in any holes, you can sand it down, and then it'll be ready to paint. I believe these dowels were about 18 inches, so I cut them down. Each one is going to make 2 9-inch pieces. We need a total of 6 dowels that are all the same length. So this is where I could have made an 18-inch tall lantern, but I just thought 9 inches was sufficient. My 2 hexagons, my chunky circle, we're going to do all 3 of those with the antique wax. Then our 6 dowels, our wooden bead, and our square that we made out of tumbling tower blocks, we are going to paint black. Again, this is very customizable for any color scheme. You can decorate this for any season or holiday. This is a great project to make any time of year. Now that my dowels are dry, I'm going to use some wood glue and glue one down inside each part of each angle of our hexagon. Just glue that down with wood glue and hold it into place. We're going to let that sit until they are completely dry. While that's drying, we will put the top of our lantern together. I'm just layering some different shapes. I have the chunky circle on top of the hexagon. Then we're going to put the black square on top of the circle. And then we're going to put the black bead on top of the black square, just to layer it and make it obvious that this is kind of the lid to our lantern. Once the dowels were dried in place, I'm just going to put inside whatever I want to style with. I made this one for fall, but like I said, depending on what you put inside, you can make this different. You can put candles inside, like battery powered candles, whatever you'd like. And I did not glue the lid down. I made it just so that if you get those dowels tucked inside, this lid will stay on. And I love how this turned out. I don't know, what would you guys do as far as colors, and what would you put inside if you made this lantern? For DIY 18, we're going to make a pair of floral wall pockets using 2 of these long rectangular signs, 2 of these pencil holders, and some fall florals. So what I did here is I took the word, the die cut word off the front of each of these signs. You can also see that I spray painted my pencil holders with kind of a caramely brown color. I want this project to have kind of a wood grain effect. So I'm going to use some wood grain scrapbook paper that I'm going to Mod Podge inside. But before I do that, I'm taking the truffle paint, just going around the inside edges and also the frame of the signs so that when I Mod Podge the paper down, none of the pink or blue is going to show. I also dry brushed that truffle color on our pencil holders. Now, like I said, using the Mod Podge, spreading that out on the backs of our little framed signs here. Then we're going to lay down that wood grain paper, smooth that out, and let that dry completely. Adding some more texture to the pencil holders, I also used some mineral chalk paint to give it a rustic farmhouse wood look. And I just kept going over it with different colors until I was happy with how it turned out. I believe I also did a layer of Mod Podge. Yep, here we go. Over each of those, because it was a plastic to start with, I didn't want the paint to scratch off. These pencil holders fit perfectly inside the frame of these signs, so I just put a bunch of hot glue on the back and then glued that in right down at the bottom of the sign. And then you can see you're going to be able to add things inside the pockets. And we're going to add jute twine to the back to make a little hanger for each of these. And just make a knot in your jute twine and then knot the other end and glue down those knots to the back of your sign. Once we had the hangers on the back, we're going to do like we've done in previous projects, just put a little bit of floral foam down there. It was so tight I didn't even have to glue it. And then I took some of these hot bushes and these different colors of maple leaves that were out in the fall and just played. I just cut them apart and added them, and I loved how these looked. I had these hanging on my wall in my entryway in the fall, and I just think they're so cute. And you can, again, change them out with the florals for the next holiday or season. DIY 19 is another one I did for fall last year using one of these cloche high domes and a chunky circle and a glass candle holder. So again, remember when I'm painting glass, I first do Mod Podge over it. Even though I did this project for fall, again, it's one that depending on what you end up putting inside can be for any theme or any decor. Go ahead and fill in that hole on your chunky wood circle, and we'll set that aside to let that dry before we paint it. Now for this coloring, I decided to use white on the chunky wood circle, also on the glass candle holder, and I'm going to paint the base of the cloche, the dome cloche, with the white as well. Once my white pieces were dry, I took some truffle chalk paint and a chip brush and distressed my white pieces, make them not look quite so perfect on the candle holder and the chunky white circle and also the base of the dome. Next, taking a combination of E6000 and hot glue, I'm first going to glue my glass candlestick to the chunky wood circle. And then we're going to glue the base of the dome cloche on top of the chunky wood circle. I really love how this turned out, layering everything like this. And once I added this burlap ribbon, it really ended up having kind of a shabby chic kind of look. But I loved all the neutral tones. And again, completely versatile to modify to your color scheme and decor style. I did two different burlap ribbons, one around the chunky wood circle and then a different one around the base of the dome. Then once your cloche is built, you can just put whatever items inside you want. I went ahead and did some of the Spanish moss and then some of these foam pumpkins and the leaves that came with them. And then you just carefully slide the dome over the top. And like I said, you can put whatever you'd like in here. Really fun and versatile. And I just think a really pretty project. DIY 20, we're going to make some Jenga block pumpkins. I used actual Jenga blocks. You could use the tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree as well. Some chalk paint and some leaves and wine corks. So for one small pumpkin, I'm going to use 2 sets of 2 blocks, 2 sets of 3 blocks, and 1 set of 4 blocks. You can see I'm just using my wood glue here and gluing these sets together, and then we're going to let those dry completely before we move on to the next project. Once my pieces were all dry, I'm going to make one small pumpkin that is this teal color. So all I'm going to do is just paint my sets of blocks on all the sides and the edges as well. Now this is another set, 2 sets of 2, 2 sets of 3, 1 set of 4. So another small pumpkin, and I'm using the pumpkin colored chalk paint. This is to make one tall pumpkin. So I have 2 sets of 4, 2 sets of 6, and 1 set of 8. You can see I just basically made the tall pumpkin like 2 small pumpkins tall. Then once the paint is dry, we're going to glue the set of 2 to the set of 3, and we're going to do both of those and let those dry. And then once those are dried, we'll glue those sets of 2 and 3 on either side of our set of 4 blocks. I think you can see what I'm doing while I am describing it, and this is what's going to make our sort of round pumpkins. Now same thing with the tall one. Here's our set of 2 wide on top of the 3 wide. Do those 2 times, and then we're going to glue those on either side of our set that is 4 blocks wide. In order to make my pumpkins look a little more worn and farmhouse, I took my antique wax and just dry brushed it on all the edges of my pumpkins, then wiped away the excess, give it kind of a rusty look. I did then take my sanding sponge from Dollar Tree, and this helped lighten up maybe where I got a little too crazy with the antique wax. But I loved how the coloring turned out on my pumpkins. Then I just hot glued a wine cork to the top of each one to be the stem, and then added some faux leaves to our pumpkins to finish them off. You can also find links in the description box for commonly used craft supplies and tools that I show often in my videos. DIY 21 was probably my favorite fall project I made last year. I'm going to make this big pumpkin porch welcome sign using 7 of these 3D wood pumpkins and 2, I believe, packs of the 5-gallon paint sticks. So like I said, I have 7 of these. I'm going to use my mineral chalk paint to paint the base of each one, and then I'm going to use either teal or orange to paint the 3 raised sections on each pumpkin. So once I removed the jute twine and the tags, I'm going to go ahead and do, like I said, try to be really careful with my painting, doing just the base layer with gray and then the 3 raised sections with either my lagoon teal or the orange. So there I was showing you I did 4 of the pumpkins with teal and then left the other 3 to paint orange in the center. Then taking some of my carbon tracing paper and some letters that I printed out on my computer, I'm going to trace the letters to spell the word welcome, starting with teal, then orange, teal, orange, teal, orange, teal, till I had all of the letters. Next, I took a black paint marker from Walmart and outlined my traced letters and then filled those in completely. I really love doing this. The coloring is kind of therapeutic. And here's all my letters on my pumpkins for my welcome sign. Next, I'm going to wood glue them together. You can see I'm going to put the letter before it on top. So I'm gluing the W on top of the stem for the E, and then I'll glue the E on top of the stem for the L, and so on and so forth. Just keeping them as straight as possible and lining up the bottom edge of the pumpkin kind of with the top of the raised section. So I did that with all of them. It's really long, so I had to put it on my floor to take a picture for you. On the back, I'm putting the 5-gallon paint stir sticks and then other pieces across. I took some Spanish moss kind of under each pumpkin to cover up where they're glued together. Then taking some of my Dollar Tree black and white gingham ribbon, I'm just making a loop, tying it in the center with some jute twine and fluffing it out for a bow. Then taking a smaller piece of burlap ribbon, we're going to fold that in thirds and wrap it around the center of our bow so you don't see where the jute twine is. So really cute, easy, simple farmhouse fluffy bow that will go at the very top of our sign. Then I made one more simple bow using the orange and white gingham ribbon from Hobby Lobby. And we're going to glue that on top of the burlap bow, just like this, at the top of our sign. Then I left extra paint stick at the bottom, so this can just be inside this bucket and lean against the corner of my porch. And I love this piece. I am thinking about making one for other seasons and holidays. I love this idea using 7 of the wood shapes from Dollar Tree. DIY 22 is another fun fall one using one more of those 3D pumpkin signs, a leftover canvas and some scrapbook paper, and this gutter guard from the home improvement store. So for this one, I'm going to use this pumpkin orange, and it's okay if I'm messy. I'm wanting to mainly cover the background, but then I'm going to use scrapbook paper over the raised areas. Now I'm going to repurpose this canvas that we used this past summer in a fun spray painting activity, but you've seen me do this before. Just cut with your knife, get the canvas off, and then once you remove the staples, you've got a really nice wood, solid wood frame that you can use to make other projects. I'm going to, you guessed it, use my antique wax to darken up this frame, brushing it on and wiping off the excess before we continue on with the pumpkin sign. Now flipping our frame over to the back, we're going to use this gutter guard. It's basically a plastic mesh that looks kind of like chicken wire, but it is much easier to cut and much easier to work with. So to go on this 12 by 12 frame, I needed 2 pieces, but that's okay because our pumpkin is going to cover up the seam. Cut one piece, kind of try and roll it the opposite way, and then I'm just using my staple gun to staple it down, keeping it as straight as possible. Now, in order to Mod Podge scrapbook paper on the raised areas of our pumpkin, I'm laying it over top and kind of using my fingernails to trace where the outline is of each shape, and you can see that worked on the back of the paper. Cut those out. And then we'll just use Mod Podge to cover those 3 raised areas, and then spritz a little water on our 3 paper pieces and Mod Podge those down onto our pumpkin. So cute. I love this plaid in fall colors scrapbook paper from Hobby Lobby, and I just thought it made this pumpkin super adorable. So spread those out and wipe out any air bubbles. The water really does help with that, and then let that dry completely. I did take a little bit of the truffle brown chalk paint just to paint the stem at the top of our pumpkin and let that dry as well. Then I loved these little berry garlands from Dollar Tree. This is a fall colored one. I decided for something different. I was going to put a few pieces of this at the top of our pumpkin instead of leaves. And then using that same orange and white gingham ribbon from Hobby Lobby, we're going to tie just a simple bow. And I decided I wanted another layer under this. So once I got this one cut, I also took a roll of the lace ribbon from Dollar Tree, and we're going to do a bow with this. It's a little bit thicker, so this bow will actually go on first, and then we'll put our gingham one on top of that. I love the different textures and the different designs of the ribbon and the bead garland on this project. The last step then, once all of that was dried on, is just to put some hot glue on the back of our pumpkin and glue that down to the gutter guard there on the center of the frame. And I love how this turned out. I can't wait to make some more, maybe with different designs of scrapbook paper. DIY 23 is one of 3 Christmas DIYs in this video. My yarn tassel Christmas tree was probably my favorite Christmas craft I made last year. So I had this sign that was coming apart and I wanted to just use the frame. So once I removed the sign part and any little nails, I'm going to once again take my giant craft sticks. These are about 10 inches in length, and I'm going to lay them across to see how many I need and also where I need to cut them in order to get them to fit as the background now of this frame. So cutting them, I only had to trim them a little bit, and I'm going to lay across to see how many I need so that I can cut those. And then I'm also going to stain them with my antique wax. I think I needed about 9 or 10 to go all the way across. So wipe on that antique wax, brush it on and wipe away the excess and let those dry. Once they're dry, we're gonna glue them to our frame, but I noticed because I was using the other side of this frame that I needed to touch up the paint. So go ahead and paint your frame and let everything dry. Now, the steps to making yarn tassels is actually pretty easy. I'm going to use 2 different greens from Dollar Tree. One's called Green and one's called Meadow. You just need something that you can wrap around. So I'm using this tag. I'm putting this cut piece. That's what we're going to actually tie all these together with. Hold it in place, and you can wrap your tassel as many times as you want. I think I did around 10 to 12 times, and try to keep them all consistent. Don't pull your yarn too tight. Trim it at the end, and then you can see I had a hard time finding my little piece for tying them off. But then once I found it, you're going to tie a knot in this piece at the top. You're going to see me trim it, but you can actually just leave those long pieces and it'll blend in with the rest of your strings. Then you're going to slide that off of your tag. Don't cut it yet. Slide it off of your tag. You're going to turn it inside out so the knot is on the inside of the little, what will be the head. And once you get everything straightened out, taking another small piece of yarn, you're going to tie that and knot it, kind of to tie off what is the little head of your tassel. Again, you can leave those long pieces down to blend in with the rest of your tassel. And then cut the loops and trim the, I guess you'd call them like the legs of the octopus, because that's what this reminds me of. An octopus head with a bunch of little legs. And that's how easy it is to make a yarn tassel. So once you get all your tassels made, you can see I'm doing 3 rows of the dark green and 2 rows of the light green. So I made 9 dark green tassels and 6 of the light green. I just glued a little piece of wood down there at the bottom to be my trunk. And we're going to center our first tassel and then start gluing them next to each other. Now you'll see that I kind of push the heads a little closer together so that the bottom of the tassels kind of flares out to make my tree. So I'm just doing 5, then 4, 3, 2, 1, just going back and forth between the two colors. Also, I didn't show this step, but with those giant craft sticks, I did glue those across the back of the frame. You've seen me do that even earlier in this video. So once we get all of our tassels glued down, got our last one there at the top, then for my star on my tree, I'm going to use one of these metal stars from Hobby Lobby, and I just have to cut the little, because it's an ornament, I just have to cut that little metal loop off at the top, and then I'm just going to glue this right to the frame because my top tassel went all the way to the top of the background. I'm going to glue that. It's kind of fun. It gives it some extra dimension too as it's popping out of the frame. And I love this. I'm definitely making more of these next year for my holiday craft show because the one I had sold pretty much right away. DIY 24, I'm making some paint stick Christmas trees. This is one that's very customizable. I'm cutting my 1-gallon paint sticks into different lengths from 2 inches all the way to 9 inches, and then we will use one as the trunk of our tree. Here you can see how I was able to get 2 pieces out of some of the sticks. And then depending on what color scheme you want to go with, you can just paint these different colors. I'm making this one more of a neutral colors, so I'm using elephant gray, I'm using the antique wax, and I'm using white. And these pieces, like I said, are 2 inches all the way to 9 inches. And we're just going to make this one with neutral colors. But I have made them in the past where they were red and had maybe different Christmas words on each of the pieces. So get all your pieces painted, and then we will get them glued to the trunk. I had shown there a chunky wood circle that I was planning on using for the base, but I'm going to make a base instead with some tumbling tower blocks. Also, for my star on my tree, I'm using a wood star from Walmart. Now here what I'm doing is I am marking very lightly with a pencil where the center of each of my pieces are so that when I glue them down to the trunk or that one whole paint stick, I can get those nice and centered. So go ahead and glue your gradually getting larger pieces onto your trunk. These I have all right next to each other. I've done them also where I leave a little bit of space between each section of the tree. Now, in order for our trees to be able to stand up, I'm going to use 8 tumbling tower blocks. I'm going to glue them together here like you see in sets of 4 to make 2 different rectangles. One will be glued to the front of the base of the tree and the other one to the back. You can see I'm making 2 sets here. Once those were dry, I did paint them with the elephant chalk paint. And then I'm going to use a combination of wood glue and hot glue to attach these to the bottom of our tree here. You can see just a couple little dots of wood glue, some hot glue in the middle, and then we're going to do that on both the front and the back to make our tree be able to stand. Then once that's dry, our last step is just to glue our wood star to the top. And again, you can see I've made different versions of these paint stick trees and I just absolutely love them. These are also great sellers at my holiday craft show as well. DIY 25, and our last project for this video are these super fun Christmas wood houses. I'm using some of these wood shapes from Dollar Tree and a variety of holiday scrapbook paper, some window clings, and some stencils from a maker's studio. The first thing I did though on all 4 of my houses is I wanted to make these two-sided and make them kind of farmhouse neutral on the inside. So using some of this black and white gingham paper, I'm going to first trace the outside of the house, then using my fingernail trace where the little frame was, and we're going to trim the paper, and we're going to just Mod Podge this on the inside of all 4 of the houses. Like I said, to cover up those bright colors and just make them a little more farmhouse neutral. If you don't care about that, then you can skip this step and just move on to decorating the back side of the houses like I did for Christmas. Now this house I wanted to paint not only the back here, but also the side. So I did use some painter's tape. I'm going to make this one all my crimson red chalk paint. This next one I'm going to trace some red and black gingham paper that I'm going to Mod Podge on the back of this house. Just tracing that out, putting a layer of Mod Podge. We're going to spritz the paper. It really helps to minimize any possible air bubbles getting caught under your paper and lets it adhere as flatly as possible. For some variety on my third house, I wanted to use this red truck that is on this window cling, but I didn't want that tree sticking out of the side. So I'm just trimming around the image that I want. I'm even going to cut off that little side mirror. And then this is going to fit so nicely on one of these houses. Before I put that down though, I'm going to give the back of this house a coat of my white Waverly chalk paint. And then my fourth house, I'm going to use this fun Christmas paper that has these Christmas words on it. Again, just tracing the outline of the back, cutting it out, and just like we did with the red and black gingham paper, we're going to Mod Podge that on. I wanted to make a little roof on this white house, so using some of this scrapbook paper with the larger black and white check, I'm going to put some Mod Podge, spritz my paper, and just line this up so that it's going to make 2 different sections kind of this house. Lay that out, add some more Mod Podge on the top, and make sure that dries completely, and then we will trim away the excess. Next, I took some sandpaper, and the 2 houses that I Mod Podged paper to, I did sand those edges and roughen up the surface a little bit. Coming back to my red one, I knew I wanted to put some sort of greenery at the top and then use one of my stencils. I liked this one that said milk and cookies for Christmas, so I'm just going to put this down on the surface, use some of my white chalk paste, and stencil that image right onto our little house. Again, this stencil in particular was from a maker's studio, and they're just like the ones I'm now using from Magnolia Design Company. Now that our house is ready, I can take some more Mod Podge and get our red truck window cling Mod Podged onto the front of this house. And we'll put Mod Podge also on the front of this red and black gingham house and let that dry as well. I did that, I believe, as well to the one that has the words on it. So I made myself a little greenery wreath and glued that to the top of the red and black gingham check house, and then adding just a small black and white checked gingham ribbon. We're going to glue that to the top of the wreath, and that will be all of the decorating that I'm going to do on that house. To finish off the house with the red truck, I'm going to take some jute twine and hot glue one end, wrap it a few times around where the black and white paper and the white meets, But while that's drying and attaching, I have this little greenery pick from Dollar General. I'm going to glue on the red house. Now that our jute twine is attached, like I said, we're going to just go around a few times where the black and white meets the white, just to kind of break it up and give a little more interest to that house. The last one we're going to modify is also the word one. We're going to take some jute twine around this one as well. Again, securing that with some glue, wrapping it, and securing the other end. This one also, I wanted to add something hanging down from the jute twine. So I'm going to take this set of 2 bells from Dollar General. I'm first going to take off the little twisty tie and the funky leaf with bead in the middle, and I just wanted these brown kind of rusty colored bells. So looping it behind the jute twine, pushing each of the bells through, I'm just gonna tie that there and let those hang down. And then we'll just add a red and black gingham ribbon, or bow, I mean, made with ribbon from Dollar General as well. These are really fun. You could make different houses like this for any season or holiday. So many different ways you can decorate these and style them. And I just think these are super fun and a great project to end the year with and to end this video with. Thanks again so much for joining me today. I really hope you enjoyed this top 25 review of my favorite DIYs from 2021. Please let me know in the comments which of these projects you look forward to creating in this next year, and we'll see you soon. Bye.